So this is an amazing video of an acting spokesperson for the State Department. He's being asked a question regarding our criticism of our criticism rather of Iranian elections and our silence with regard to Saudi Arabia elections. Take a listen to this video.
Well, you were over there. The secretary criticized the conduct of the Iranian elections and Iran's record on democracy. He did so standing next to Saudi officials. How do you characterize Saudi Arabia's commitment to democracy? And does the administration believe that democracy is a buffer or barrier or against extremism?
The silence is deafening.
I think what we'd say is that at this meeting, we were able to make significant progress with Saudi and GCC partners in both making a strong statement against extremism and also putting in place certain measures through this GCC mechanism where we can combat extremism. Clearly, one source of extremism, one terrorism threat is coming from Iran. And that's coming from a part of the Iranian apparatus that is not at all responsive to its electorate.
Watch this.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, I can't help but laughing because clearly this is not a standard spokesperson. But I'm not sure that, actually, no, let me back up. I actually appreciate the fact that he's revealed, to me, he revealed the fact that this is not a question that people are actually thinking about in the State Department. How are we criticizing Iran for their elections when we deal with, on a regular basis, Saudi Arabia, who don't even have elections? If we talk about human rights violations or the fundamentalist nature of their religion, I mean, yes, there are problems in Iran, clearly, but when we compare it to our beloved ally, Saudi Arabia, where Donald Trump went and literally bowed before the king, if you consider the human rights violations, the rights of women, the precarious nature of the LGBTQ community, and precarious as being generous, you can't really criticize Iran, and not look at the fact that we are in bed with one of the most fundamentalist versions of Islam on the globe, if not the most fundamentalist version. And so the comparisons between the two is really something that we see the State Department, or at least this spokesperson, was not ready for, a question that they should have gamed out, to be quite frank with you. This is a question that people should be discussing in the halls of the State Department every single day, because this is on the minds of more and more of the American people. Now, the reality of it is that the reason we don't criticize Saudi Arabia is because we've been in bed with Saudi Arabia for such a long time. I mean, we have worked with the Saudi government, with the House of Saud, for generations. We're at the point where we are so codependent in this relationship with Saudi Arabia that we are willing to turn a blind eye to their treatment of the LGBTQ community there. I mean, and to be precise with my language, right, the execution of gay and lesbian members of their society. And the fact that the treatment of women, the fact they cannot drive, they can't go into public without a male member of their family. Like, we have turned a blind eye to Saudi Arabia on so many issues, the least of which is not the war in Yemen. I mean, we are seeing a humanitarian disaster in Yemen like we've never seen. The UN is saying that we as a world should be ashamed of ourselves, essentially, for standing by and watching what Saudi Arabia and the United States are complicit with in Yemen. And yet we have the nerve to criticize the problematic nature of Iran. Now, Iran is not without its problems. Now, the spokesperson in that video actually alluded to it at the very end. Right. This is probably where he should have started if he wanted to have a standard news conference, right? A press conference. But at the end, he brought up the fact that there's really two distinct power structures in Iran. That there's two distinct power structures, one that's controlled by an elected body. That elected body has a vice president that is a woman. And that is something that you would not see in Saudi Arabia. However, there's another side that's led by the Ayatollah that is religiously fundamentalist and has a grip on the society of Iran. Now, that is something that he could have put up front, but he couldn't because he was thrown off by a very straightforward question. How do we criticize the problems of Iran, particularly with regard to their elections? And we are in bed with a nation that doesn't even allow elections, that treats the LGBTQ community with so much contempt, and that is being generous, too generous, murderous treatment of the LGBTQ community and the disenfranchisement of women in their society. I mean, we have seen that the fact that Saudi Arabia is authoritarian, and to say that is not breaking news or shocking news. But what's shocking news is the fact that we're in bed with them continuously, so much so that we would turn a blind eye to what happens to members of their own country and to members to the people of Yemen while this war rages on in the area. Historically, it is a relationship that has been based on the petrodollar. It's a relationship that's based on our need to a constant access and flow of oil. It's based on a long tradition of never really criticizing the core problems of their society because we need access to what they have. And so we've created this codependent relationship with Saudi Arabia that allows us to criticize another nation for terrorism when, in fact, 19 of the hijackers on 9/11 came from Saudi Arabia. And the fundamentalist nature of Wahhabism is one of the key problems that persist in the global order today, comes from Saudi Arabia, fueled by Saudi Arabia. And yet we have the problem, we have the nerve as a nation to criticize Iran. That moral inconsistency, that hypocrisy is so glaring. You would think somebody at the State Department would have thought this out and gamed this out. But apparently, this was the first time somebody at the State Department has been posed with this question. And I only wonder what the previous administrations, how they would have answered. But the current administration underneath Donald Trump really leaves us at a loss for words.